Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob here, and he'll be talking about Iron Helm, which is the first book in the Maztica Trilogy, or Maztica Trilogy by Douglas Niles. Of course, Douglas Niles and Tim Beach co-authored the Maztica campaign set for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in, I think, like 1987. Much like, I think it was the Dark Walker on Moonshae's trilogy, which kicked off the Moonshae series. It was basically Forgotten Realms expanding and going into a whole bunch of different directions. One of them being Maztica, which is a rather troubled direction, as you'll see in this review. Iron Helm, which has a really beautiful cover. There is a bit of a glare from my window, so I do apologize for that, but absolutely beautiful cover. But you might notice, besides the dwarf in the background holding a crossbow, there isn't a whole lot here that screams Dungeons & Dragons, or at least Dungeons & Dragons that we're used to, or I'm used to. Especially the fact that all the warriors seem to be dressed very much as like Spanish conquistadors, which is a little weird, especially considering the fact that they are coming from Waterdeep, which Waterdeep is known for knights and wizards and all that sort of thing. And while there are wizards in here, they only actually travel with one wizard, the conquistadors, which are led by a Captain Cordell. And they have come basically looking for gold and end up establishing a place called Helmsport, because along with a Bishop of Helm, which the god Helm is represented by like a gauntlet, and I do believe is like the god of like guardians and warriors. So already kind of a weird one to use as far as conquest wise, and also don't quote me on that. I've only played a paladin a couple of times, so I could be completely wrong when it comes to Helm, but I do believe that is correct. Let me know in the comments if I am wrong, of course. But yeah, basically under the guise of Helm and, well, obviously greed, they go about quickly slaughtering the inhabitants of Maztica. And basically, yeah, history as we know it in the real world is being played out in the Forgotten Realms, which to me is kind of problematic because it does show, I cannot really pronounce the main character's name. It's like Ertix, or E-R-T-I-X, something like that, is the main female protagonist. And she, of course, possesses a type of magic. They call it like feather magic. Basically, like, I mean, they're wizards. They're essentially, it's just a different sort of wizardry almost, or maybe even a higher clerical power. But like wizards are described in Dungeons & Dragons, they need certain bits and baubles to be able to pull off the spells. A lot of the things they use for their magical spells come from the natural world around them. Now, the thing I have an issue with is, you know, they describe floating palanquins and like all of these higher forms of magic. I mean, they're warriors. Most of their warriors and their armies are shapeshifters who turn into jaguars and eagles, and they have all these different types of knights and magic that causes disease and plagues and all this, but yet somehow they are absolutely slaughtered time and time again. Every confrontation with Cordell's much smaller force. I think they said he only comes across on like 3 boats or something like that. And so yeah, it was just very problematic, and to me seemed like a very glaring plot hole. Because once again, this is Dungeons & Dragons. It's not like they have guns or explosives or really anything like that. I think they may have had like very primitive like lit fuse hand grenades. But once again, they are facing a overwhelming force. Chainmail and that sort of things really aren't described. In fact, most of them are wearing, you know, the helmets and stuff that's described here. Even the dwarf is basically just carrying a crossbow. But somehow we are led to believe that they are able to reload their crossbows so fast that they almost work like semi-automatic weapons, the way they are cutting down the native population of Maztica, and they are unstoppable. Of course, there is one hero in here who has come along with them, who is now head over heels for Urtix, and, you know, obviously realizes what his company's doing is wrong and tries to help. And yeah, there's a lot more here. I don't want to pick apart the entire plot because I'm sure people do want to read these. I will say that getting near the end of the book, they do lead down a path in which feels very much more Forgotten Realmsy. For instance, there is a big bad in here, and we do discover that dark elves do exist in Maztica. I'm not going to say how and what they're up to, but knowing dark elves in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, we know they are up to no good. And there are also dwarves in Maztica, who are also not really like dwarves you know, we see normally in the Forgotten Realms. These are desert dwelling dwarves. For the most part, they live above ground, and that was really interesting to see. And there are glimpses into I forget what they call it, but it's like the cataclysm which broke the Underdark, and they talk about that a little bit. So I found that very interesting. Now, I think in the later ones, because this is a trilogy, I do plan to read the entire trilogy. I've been looking for this trilogy for a long time, so I do plan to read and review the whole thing. I am hoping that the first book was just kind of a clunky start, and that the second books will really tie it all together a lot better, because there are some likable characters in here. There are characters I want to see more of. I definitely want to see the magic system of the Maztica play out a lot more, because it is a very interesting and very original magic system. And I also, you know, I want to see Cordell and his company that have come to conquer this land get their comeuppance. I mean, of course, who doesn't? I'm really hoping a lot of the things that happen in this book, which, to be fair, they were clunky. They are kind of plot holes for people that especially know Dungeons and Dragons, even a little bit. But I'm hoping that they were just kind of setting the series up for what's to come. Because once again, if Cordell didn't slaughter the native population to a certain extent, we wouldn't hate him as much. So I'm hoping it's something like that. And that it won't be as problematic going forward. Because, you know, when you're in both sides' headspace, it is really weird when a character like Urtix or one of the priests that serve the gods of Maztica suddenly don't understand how boats work or something like that, because these really aren't higher technologies from what they're used to. I mean, you know, it's kind of weird. It's not really going from a primitive society to a like late Renaissance society. It's very much like a somewhat primitive, I mean, I wouldn't even call it a primitive society, because it seems like their cities all run on magic, so that's not very primitive. It almost is more like one medieval society meeting another medieval society. And I thought it was kind of weird that one was seen as technically superior by you know, technological aspects, when I'm like, it's just crossbows, and it is a very small number of crossbows. So I just find it very hard to suspend my, you know, disbelief when it's, you know, 20 crossbowmen taking on 500 people and coming out successful. Yeah, I don't know. I've used crossbows in Dungeons and Dragons. I know they take a turn to reload, so I will just have to believe that every one of those was a natural 20. But yes, there is a lot. Like I said, there are characters that are very likable in this. It does set up a very interesting premise. It is a very different type of Forgotten Realms book, and it is a corner of the Forgotten Realms that I definitely want to explore a little more, because I think the authors and the creators went into it wanting to create something different and didn't necessarily go in trying to be problematic or anything like that. They just wanted to make something wholly original in the role-playing game space. Now, of course, Maztica, I don't think made it to... it was either 3rd or 3.5. I just know the Spell Plague, I think, does subsume it. It was kind of written off, I think, by TSR or what Wizards of the Coast. I don't remember which one. And now I think it's kind of come back a bit with Tabaxi and Schult, and I'm sure there were game manuals and stuff about it. 3.5 had so many manuals that I can't even pretend to know them all. But anyway, this book's clunky. I'm excited for the rest of the series. There are some really interesting characters, and I want to see where it goes more. I definitely don't agree with how easily Cordell and his men are able to establish Helmsport and take over the cities, because I do think the magic in Maztica would have stopped them in their tracks based on how it's described in the earlier chapters and the way some of the characters that use the system of magic in there are able to maneuver. Agree or disagree, please let me know in the comments. And as always, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. And stay tuned, because I am starting the second book and I'm hoping to get these videos out quicker. See you guys next time.